We want you to be getting lessons as you wait at home until we're able to get back in the physical world again. I want you to take advantage of what the technology has to offer in terms of being able to, do your research wide and far on the particular subject area and go deep into the subject area. We want for you to visit the many apps and websites that the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information has. We have a number of e-resources available to help students with their exams and just to help them in general to remain, connected and to continue to get the stimulation while you're away from the physical school. Should I take that question?
Okay, so we're going to the first question. So are the children only going to do the ability test? So will the ability test be administered? Is that the only one that will be administered to our children? Dr. Troop, I wonder if you want to take that question.
Okay, thank you very much, Scar. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As it relates to the question, the ability test is offered at grade 6 level, so I'm taking that the question has to do with our grade 6 students. So as our minister previously announced, our grade 6 students, at this time, we have agreed that they will sit the ability test, and as minister said, we have to be flexible. We are guided by what is happening with the time, but at this time, the decision has been taken that we would have cancelled the curriculum-based test and the performance task for our grade 6 students, and we have rescheduled them to sit the ability test on the 26th of May, 2021. So yes, that's the only test at this time that our grade 6 students will be sitting as it relates to the primary exit profile.
Thank you, Dr. Troop, and I'm going right to Minister. What is the plan for the grade 5 exams?
We are very cognizant of the fact that our grade 4 and grade 5 also need to take the exams, and it was only today that we had a planning session around that. I'm going to ask the CEO, Chief Education Officer, to help me out here in terms of exactly what it is that we're going to be doing with our grades 4 and 5.
Thank you, Minister. So as Minister indicated, just today, we went back into our data set to look at how our students are being engaged at the grade 5 and grade 4 levels. So our school operations team, they gather data weekly to see how many of our grade 4 students are engaged. And when we talk about engagement, we're talking about those who are online, those who are using the learning kits, those who are using the televised and radio program. Our principals, they send through that information weekly to our Deputy Chief Education Officer, Ms. Derek Campbell, who packages that and send it on to us and our minister. So we have been able to examine that data for the grades 5 students and our grade 4 students. And we are presenting to our minister some plans to determine the way forward, because we have to take clinical decisions as it relates to our boys and our girls, and how fair and equitable the administration of the exam can be at this time for them. So the Ministry of Education is always ensuring that when we take a decision, it's in the best interest of our students. So we are looking at a number of options. Is it possible at this time, based on the number of students who are engaged, to be able to sit that exam, and it would be a fair exam with respect to what the students have been exposed to? That's one thing. We are looking at what is happening with the pandemic in light of our face-to-face engagement and our students being back into the environment. And we have to look at all those things in respect to whether or not we will be having sufficient data at the end of the day to place our students at grade 6. So those are some of the variables that we have presented to our minister today. And in very short order, a final decision will be shared with the public with respect to how those exams, if we are going to be having them, with respect to the data that we are examining, and if not, what will be the way forward concerning our grade 5 and our grade 4 students.
Thank you for that comprehensive explanation, Dr. Troop. If diagnostic tests are to take place, why couldn't they be used to place the students?
Okay.
So, Dr. Troop, you're on the floor, yes.
Thank you very much for that. So the diagnostic test, as the name suggests, is really an assessment for us to determine the gaps in the learning plan for our boys and our girls. So it's not a placement exam. It is an exam that is designed to give teachers information to determine the learning plan for our boys and girls at their grade levels. Or if it is that they're going to be moving on, that information will go with them so the teachers can plan for learning. So that's the nature of the diagnostic test. When we look at the placement test, that's a different situation. We are looking at schools that are ranked. We are looking at a very high stake experience for our boys and girls. And so we have to rely on standardized examination and assessment to place our students in a very clinical way that can stand up to scrutiny that is fair. The diagnostic test is a school-based administered exam, and so that in itself opens up the assessment to some queries and concerns. So we have to make sure that when we do the different assessment, that it is equitable, that it is fair, that it is valid and reliable, so the students can be placed in the best way that is possible for them, and that will not open us to any kind of criticism or concerns which relates to fairness for our boys and girls. So the diagnostic test is not a placement exam. It's designed to tell us how to help our boys and girls to improve in their learning goals.
Thank you, Dr. Troop. Minister, if there is no considerable reduction in COVID cases, what is the contingency plan for PEP?
Well, that's a great question. It's a question that requires us to kind of peer into the future from here to at least begin to think along those lines. We would have made changes to the exam as we set a first date, and as we approached it, we saw the signs, the increase in the COVID positive numbers. So we've set a second date now. Obviously, we're working closely with the Ministry of Health and Wellness. We have great hope that together with the vaccination that has been happening, that we'll start to see decline in the numbers, and that persons will finally, given the fines that are there if they do not wear masks and abide by the protocols, that we will begin to see greater adherence to the protocols, because we know that will lead to the good outcome that we want to see in terms of the decline in the numbers. So we're at the beginning of April, so we have a month, almost 2 months to go. A lot can happen in 2 months, and we're hoping that Jamaicans have finally gotten the message, with the fines that have been announced, imposed, the laws that are there, and the vaccination. Many persons are taking it up to be able to, help our population to develop some immunity to this. So I'm very hopeful. But if not, it's something that we have to work on and plan for from now.
And certainly we've had to pivot and pivot and pivot again, Minister. Might you use this opportunity then to just say something to Jamaicans who are still resistant, who do not want to wear masks, who are not necessarily practicing the recommended hygiene, the hygiene practices, I beg your pardon, that are recommended? What do you want to say to them?
I want to
And
say
are not staying at
no,
home,
seriously.
yes.
I want to say to Jamaicans, think of our children. Think of our children. They have been out of school for over a year, practically. We tried to go back to school in November, December, January. It was going very well. Our boys and girls were happy to be back. I mean, they love their tablet as well,
Yes.
but they were happy to be back with their friends and so on. So think of what is happening to them, especially those boys and girls who are not able to get online just yet, either because they don't have a device yet or they don't have connectivity. Think of the learning loss that's happening to our children, and you may have children as well, so I want to appeal to all Jamaicans, take this serious, please, because we all have to come out of this or nobody comes out of it when you think
So
about it, because it
interesting.
only takes one of us to have COVID to spread it to everybody else. So, again, it's an appeal to Jamaicans to let us work together for the good of our children so that we can get them safely again into the physical environment.
Thank you, Minister. Well said, and certainly endorsed by all of us here this afternoon. So we move on. I just want to remind you that we have the Chief Executive Officer of the CPFSA, that's the Child Protection and Family Services Agency, and I want you to send through questions for her as well, please. Okay, and we continue. There are many questions about the grade 5 PEP, which we've answered well. How can a child without the SRN student registration number apply for the Own Your Own Device program?
Yes.
P.S., do you want to take that? Yes. Dr. McLean will take that. Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. Special good afternoon, good evening rather, to our parents and our students who may be tuning in at this time. Well, let me just say to you, the student registration number is a very important number that is actually being utilized now for the Own Your Own Device program, but will be utilized for many other initiatives and activities throughout the education system. So we are not at this time permitting anyone to be able to enter the program and to become eligible without the student registration number. What I can say to you that the number is easily accessible. We have a team of persons who do work in that particular area, and they are willing and able to provide you with the number if it cannot be provided by your school. And so in a few minutes, we will provide you with the numbers that you are able to call so that that number can be provided centrally if you are not able to get that number from your school. Let me also say that numbers are available for all our students from grade 1 through to the end of secondary. So whether you are in grade 1 or you are in sixth form, you still do have a student registration number. And if you can recall those little cards that you may have received over the years but were not being used, now is the time for you to find those cards. Maybe your parents do have the cards in safekeeping, and if not, we will ensure that you are provided with the number, which should be kept safely, because you are definitely going to be needing this number even after we have completed the Own Your Own Device program.
Thank you, P.S. Here's another question. My child is on PATH and still has not received a tablet. What can I do? P.S. Minister, do you want to take that? Go ahead, Minister, please.
So the government would have concluded its first purchase of tablets for our children on PATH in grades 4, 5, and 6. And we would have made the distribution to those students. Based on our numbers, all PATH students in grades 4, 5, and 6 should have received a device. We're moving now to our PATH students in grades 10, 11, 12, and 13. We have 15,000 laptops. We know that that's not sufficient. The government will be doing other purchases. We've looked at how best to allocate the 15,000, depending on how many PATH students are at the school or in the particular class. So we're doing our best to distribute those as equitable as possible. And we have other procurements on the way for our PATH students. We're going to be looking at grades 7 to 9 as well for tablets. But it's a process. It's taken us some time to go through the procurement. And you may be aware as well that globally, every school across the globe has had to go to online learning. And so there's been a huge demand for tablets and laptops. And so there's a significant time lag between when we make the purchase order and when those are delivered to us. But I can assure you that we will continue our efforts to ensure that all our children have a device. It will take some time, but that is our goal, that is our vision, and we will not stop until that happens. We have a number of other programs as well to ensure that our children who are from needy families do get a grant to be able to buy a tablet or laptop. And we have made an appeal to corporate Jamaica or diaspora individuals in Jamaica to come on board and help us by providing devices for our children, and they have been doing that. So we are very hopeful that with all these initiatives that we will be covering a lot of ground. We've covered a lot of ground already, but we know that there's still more to go. So we're just asking for a little bit of patience. If you're able to get a phone with a big enough screen to fill the gap in the meantime, that can help. We are moving as quickly as we can on all fronts to ensure that our students can access the virtual world safely.
Thank you kindly, Minister. And I have a little bit of information here regarding the student registration number. For those parents who are having a difficulty, there are a few numbers to call. The first is 876-612-5702. That's 876-612-5702, extension 2418. Extension 2418. You may also call 948-9254. And of course, 876 goes before that number. So it's 876-948-9254. You may also send a WhatsApp to 876-455-3003. Here we go again. 876-455-3003. Send a WhatsApp. And if all of those fail, please send us an email to NSRS, N as in no, S as in Sam, R as in root, S as in Sam, at moey.gov.jm. Thank you for those questions, and we continue. Okay. This is a good means of engaging us parents. How often will these sessions be held? As often as possible. So we have been doing well, I believe, and thank you for recognizing, and it's really good to be interfacing with you this way. Thank you so much for acknowledging that. Can we be provided with a percentage breakdown that will be applied to exam components, grade 4 performance, and upcoming ability test? Let's go again. Can we be provided with a percentage breakdown that will be applied to exam components of the grade 4 performance and upcoming ability test? Dr. Troop?
Thank you very much, Kesia. We expected that question, and because we understand that parents are a little bit concerned as to how are we going to make the adjustment with respect to the weighting of the different exams, given that we would have taken the decision to cancel the CBT, which is a curriculum-based test, and the performance task. So parents, we are still at the discussion board with our consultant psychometrician on this matter. It's a very technical matter as it relates to the removal of a set of questions and recalibrating and making sure that nobody is disadvantaged in the combination of scores for the placement of our students. So our minister is awaiting the final submission from our psychometrician to deliberate further, and then we will communicate that in a timely manner with you. We understand the fears, we understand the concerns, but we have been here before. Last year we took the decision to cancel the CVT and the performance task for our grade 6 students, and we only relied on the ability test and the grade 4 score that they had at the time. So we have some amount of experience with this situation. It's not new to us. When we arrived at the waiting score the last time, we also relied on our psychometrician. So we're asking for some more time for us to go back through that process so we can be very thorough and we can be very fair in what we do. Out of last year's experience, we got some concerns from some of our parents. We were able to address those. Parents have the opportunity, when our scores are released, to come to our centers, to view their papers, to look to make sure that they feel justified in the scores that the students would have been awarded. We have that facility in place to make sure that your queries are satisfied if it is that you have concerns after we would have published the scores. So parents, we're asking for some more time on this because we want to be precise, we want to be accurate, we want to be fair. But we do understand and we ask for some patience. We are working on that.
Thank you, Dr. Troop. Now, are the children who have not been attending online or face-to-face classes going to be asked to sit the PEP test? Dr. Troop?
Yes, all our boys and girls at grade 6, we are anticipating that every one of our students who are registered, I think, Minister, we have approximately 37,500 students registered for the ability test. And we are anticipating that all of our students will turn up for that assessment. And once that is done, we will start the scoring and conditioning and making sure that results are available in a timely manner. So we're anticipating that all our boys and girls who have registered, that they will sit the exam.
Thank you, Dr. Troop. And may I now just invite Dr. McLean to answer, what are the arrangements in place for children with learning challenges who are to sit the PEP exam?
Okay, so just to say that question is well placed for the Chief Education Officer, who can speak about the specific accommodations.
Thank you very much. Yes.
I was trying to help you out, Dr. Troop.
Nature of the job.
So we do have accommodations. We call it accommodations. We do have some facilities in place to make sure that our students with special needs, they are not disadvantaged. And likewise, what we did for last year and our previous years, our parents who have students who have special needs, they do their psychometric psychoeducational assessment for their students. This is submitted to our special education department. This is reviewed, and once it is satisfactory, then decisions are taken. From the psychoeducational assessment, there are different recommendations that are made by the psychoeducational specialists for us to take into consideration. So, for example, for our students who may have dyslexia, they may need a writer or a scribe. That facility is in place in the Ministry of Education for us to provide a writer for our students.
Yes, I have this in mind.
We have students who the psychoeducational specialist will say they need somebody to prompt them. They may get distracted easily, and so somebody needs to be sitting beside them. The Ministry of Education also provides that. We have our shadows who are trained by our specialists in the special education division, and they are there in the examination room supporting those boys and girls. We may have students with visual challenges. The psychoeducational specialist will say in that report that this student must be at the front. So special seating is reserved for that child. We may have children who are visually impaired. So we translate or convert the paper to Braille for those students to do their exam, and then we translate that back for the marking and for the reporting of their results. So we have a suite of responses that are in place. We have other persons who may need linguistic aids. They have different languages. That is their dominant language. And so we have to get persons who speak those languages to be in the exam center to support those students, to translate their instructions, to answer their questions, and just to be there. So we have our specialists in place. We have a suite of accommodation in place to help our boys and girls to make sure that they get a fair chance. We have persons who do sign language for those students who are hearing impaired. So we also recruit those persons, train them, they are in the exam room, and they are set up to make sure that all our boys and girls are fairly treated at the exam and they get an equal opportunity to earn their places in their high schools.
Thank you, Dr. Troop. I'm going to ask Minister this question, and then I'll ask Mrs. Gage to just share with us key information using this. Thank you. So I'm going to throw this question now to our minister, and then I will ask Mrs. Gage Gray to just give us some important updates. Here we go. Minister, Shetwood School needs to be open for grade 6, please, ma'am.
We understand. We understand. That is not the only request that we would have gotten with regards to schools and the need for schools to be open. But again, we are going through a health crisis. And so we have to be guided by the Ministry of Health and Wellness. We have to keep our boys and girls safe, and that being at home right now as we go through the community spread in which our numbers have been increasing, the government has asked that our students remain at home. But trust me, as soon as we're able to, we will. As soon as, it looks clear on the horizon and the Ministry of Health and Wellness says it's time, we will be back to let you know. Our schools have been inspected, and we are continuing that. We're not stopping. We know our schools have been abiding by the protocols, especially when students are there. And so we know they are prepared. It's not going to take a long time to get our schools up to that point when we again say it's time for the physical classroom again. So we do understand the question, and believe me, we are as anxious as you are to have our boys and girls back in the physical environment.
Thank you, Minister. Mrs. Gage Gray, what do you want to say to the parents out there and children who might have some concerns, and what other updates do you have for us?
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Minister Pierce, Dr. Troop. Good evening, parents and children and students who might be listening. So the Child Protection and Family Services Agency have been working very closely with our guidance counselors, principals on the ground to support our students as they go through this very trying, as they would say, time in this pandemic with COVID-19. We have worked with the guidance counselors who oftentimes make reports to us so that we can investigate if there is some difficulty with the child at home presently. We are concerned about the level of psychosocial issues that we are seeing based on the reports that we are getting. And so our response have been to do what we call drive-throughs to communities, where we, based on where the reports are coming from, we do the mapping and we go into those communities to offer advice and give some support to the families there as well. We are very keen on our students being able to respond and to get into the learning environment, whether as they are now at home using the devices. We also have children in care, and we are pleased to advise that we have been able to provide devices to all children in children's homes and in our foster placements, and also those children who are on reintegration. We are right now looking at our children who are being prepared for PEP as well, and the team is working with them to give them the extra support, the emotional support that they would need as they prepare to do the exams later on. We are asking parents, guardians, that the matter of the supervision of children at this time is very critical. Children they are very resilient, but even us as adults now are getting very weary with that's our ability not to do the things we normally do. And therefore, the support that they need at this time is very, very important. And we are asking parents to not to leave the children alone, but to have a responsible adult who is going to provide that level of supervision. We do ask that if you are having difficulties, we are here to help, and we ask that you make the necessary reports to us. The reporting number 888-PROTECT, that's 888-776-8328. And you can report to us through report at childprotection.gov.jm or to our regular email info@childprotection.gov.jm. We are just encouraging you that we are here to support you with the ministry, and we ask that don't keep the problems to yourself. Call in to us, and we will respond. Our officers have been in the field. We have not stopped. We do some amount of teletherapy, but we believe that the contact that we have to make to parents and children in the communities is going to be critical as we try to help through this pandemic. So we're just asking parents, we know it's difficult, but we are making a special appeal, especially during this long weekend, that vigilance be paid, that you plan your activities for the children over the period so that they can be engaged during the period as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Very good tips there, Mrs. Gagery. Thank you so much. So we continue. Will students be required to wear school uniforms to sit the exam, Dr. Troop?
Yes, we're expecting our students, and I know my parents would want their students to turn up in their uniform. We need to know that they are the students, that we must be able to identify them. And when we are doing an exam of this nature, parents, we really do not want anything new in the environment. So our boys and girls to be confused about what to wear, to be preoccupied with something other than their uniforms that they are comfortable with. We want to normalize as much as possible. So we anticipate and we expect that our parents will comply with the normal regulations of schools for students to wear their uniform to their schools. Yes, and remember the mask, parents. Yes. You need to ensure that your children wear their masks to school, especially on the day of the exam. And we will make sure that all the protocols remain in place. They will be sanitized. Upon entering the exam centers, they will be expected to wear their mask. We will ensure that the seating apart is 6 feet, so they will be safe in the centers. And Minister said earlier, we have an adult. To every 10 children, we have an adult, right? So we are keeping everyone safe. And the experience is not long. In 1.5 hours, the students will be complete with their assessment. And of course, our parents can arrange for them to be transported home or to pick them up, or the normal arrangement that you have in place to make sure that our boys and girls can go back home safely on May 26th.
Thank you. There is an important comment here. There has been significant learning loss. How will that be factored into making the ability test standard and fair to all?
Go ahead, Dr. Chu.
As Minister would have been saying over the period since we have been speaking about PEP, we have been indicating to our parents that the ability test really is focused on content materials that our boys and girls would have covered from grades 1 to 4. So we know that the disruption would have created some concerns for our parents. But we have been saying to our parents, though there may be gaps in the learning at the grade 5 and grade 6 level brought on by the pandemic, we are confident that what we had done with our boys and girls during their earlier years up to grade 4, there is sufficient knowledge and competence to manage the ability test. So it's not based actually on the grade 5 and 6 content. It's actually based on content and materials and skills that our boys and girls would have been exposed to up to grade 4. So we're asking our parents not to be too worried about our students' ability to complete that exercise, because it's not been testing. It's not going to be testing the grades 5 and grade 6 content, as we are fully aware. And that is why our minister took the decision to cancel the curriculum-based test, which is heavily based on what our students should have done in grades 5 and grade 6. But we're aware that the disruption would have disrupted all those teaching experiences. And so we did not want to put our boys and girls at a disadvantage and to test them on something that they are not familiar with, and to create that sense of fear in the assessment period. So that is why we took the decision to remove that exam, given that we are confident from what you have been through, that you would not have been adequately prepared to do that exam. And so we are assured that the ability test is something that our boys and girls can do. It's really thinking about quantitative and qualitative reasoning. And we are preparing our teachers more now than ever to support our students as they prepare for this type of assessment.
Thank you, Dr. Troop. And we have a comment here. Thanks for responding to the voucher question. You're most welcome. COVID is spreading widely. We pray that all our children remain COVID-free. I share in that prayer. However, just in case they become infected, I beg your pardon, are there any plans in place for students who may be in quarantine at this time for them to do the ability test? That's a good question. Yes.
That's a good question.
That is something that we have been discussing, Minister and PS. We have been looking at all the variables that are possible on the day, where sometimes in previous years, we would have had students who would not be able to make it to the exam center. And so we would have to rely on previous assessment scores that we have available for our students. And as we said before, we have a standardized assessment score that our boys and girls would have done at grade 4. And we will rely on that first and foremost if it is that we have to get to a situation where we have to rely on the one assessment. We will look at the nature of how the students would have been progressing over the years. So when we have these anomalies, we have situations in place to look at the complete profile of the child, or the child has been performing over the years, and use that information to support the decision that we will take for the placement of that child. The situation is that once the paper is exposed on a particular day, it becomes very difficult to give that same instrument to another student at another time. It creates challenges for fairness and validity and reliability of the complete exam set. So we would not necessarily be able to do that, but we will rely on the strategy that we have always used over the years for students who may miss an assessment, who may not be able to turn up. And as an education officer myself, I've been to centers where our boys and girls fall ill on the day of exam and they are not able to complete. But a ministry of this nature, we are robust and we are able to pull on scores internally, look at profiles of our children and take decisions in their best interest.
Thank you. Well said, Dr. Troop. Here we go. Now, Minister, what is the size of the gap between what we need and what we're able to procure in terms of the devices at this time? And is a key issue in filling this gap funding or available supply?
Well, the gap in terms of devices, we've been filling that gap since last year. In terms of, as I would have said earlier on, in terms of our grades 4, 5, and 6 for our PATH students, we have filled that gap. We're working on our PATH students in grades 10, 11, 12, and 13. We have over 100,000 PATH students, 125,000 PATH students. We have begun with the 15,000 laptops, and so we've said there are additional procurement that are underway for our grades 7 to 9. For grade 7 to 9, right, additional procurement of 16,000 tablets for those students. Additionally, we are still in the throes of sending out the e-vouchers for $20,000 to our parents who are, needy and would need an assistance to help them to purchase a tablet or a laptop. We've targeted 36,000 needy families for that. In terms of the numbers, about 5,000 of them would have already gotten the e-vouchers and made the purchase of the device. There are another 3,000 who have the vouchers, and so when they're ready, they'll go and buy the devices, and we continue to accept application for the remainder of the program. So far we would have gotten some 20,000 applications. So you can see we still have 13,000 more to go to complete that program. Additionally, there's a continual giving on the part of corporate Jamaica, individuals or diaspora or international partners. They continue to give devices, and we, we donate them to families that are needy as well. We look at the schools to see how many students would have devices. We ensure that the schools with the least amount of devices get additional devices, and we work along in that pattern. Relative where we are now, relative to where we started in October of last year, we are a far way along in terms of devices for our students and in terms of connectivity as well. We've done a number of things. We've ensured that more of our schools have access to the internet. We know that students are not in the physical school right now, but in communities, there are students who live near, that are able to access the Wi-Fi situation at schools. So we are, when we take an assessment of where we are relative to where we were, we're pleased, but we know still we have ground to cover, and we're not going to get weary. We're going to cover all that ground on behalf of our boys and girls.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Minister. And in that same breath, Minister, I'm being told Salt Marsh Primary in Trelawney hasn't received any tablets. So we will certainly make a note of that, Salt Marsh Primary in
Mm.
Trelawney,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll fact check too, because it might not
Yeah.
be so.
Yeah.
So we'll certainly update you on that.
Okay.
You
I
know,
can't
it
imagine
is
that.
5
Okay.
minutes
Yeah.
to 7 o'clock. I can't imagine that we have almost expended the time. So I'm going to answer one or two more questions. And then what I usually do is collate all those questions that we did not get to answer right here. I will send them through, and then we will put the answers on the platforms, the various platforms, so that parents, your questions will still be answered. All right, so we continue. What will happen if a parent does not feel comfortable sending out his or her child to do the exam, as they deem the COVID numbers are still too high?
Well, with respect to the exam, if the student is registered for the exam and there's a decision that is taken for the child not to sit by the parent at that time, there are opportunities to treat with that, as I said earlier. If it is that we have to place the child based on the scores that we have, that's 1 or 2, the parent and we will take that decision to repeat the child in the grade. The fact that the child would not have been exposed to the PEP examination, that gives the parent an opportunity for that child to repeat that grade and to sit the exam at a later date. So those are opportunities that are available in the system for our children. But as you know, those who are born 2008, 2009, 2010, those students are encouraged to sit. Those are the students who are predominantly sitting. We have students within grade 6 this year who would have deferred, meaning that parents would have taken the decision already, not for the students not to sit, and that's okay. We have asked for those students to go back to grade 5 and prepare themselves with the grade 5 students so they can also prepare to do the grade 5 assessment if it is that in the future we will have that assessment. So we have already instructed the system and guided those parents, those who have indicated to us that their grade 6 children will not sit because they are not comfortable, they are not ready, and they have years on their side. They are born earlier or later. Sorry. So with respect to that, once we are within the regular grouping, we will provide for the opportunity for the child to repeat the year and get his or her chance to sit that PEP exam, given that he or she would not have been exposed to that already.
Thank you, Dr. Troop. And Mrs. Gage-Gray, here we go. Based on reports coming from the CPFSA, are you worried about the statistics of the number of children in state care who have been affected with COVID? And what is the body doing to reach or to help the children?
So the reports of COVID in the residential childcare facility has been I would say moderate. We have not had any significant outbreaks in the facilities. The last report at our disaster management meeting on Monday reported that there were no new cases within the facilities. So we have been encouraging our staff within those facilities, both the private and the government facilities, to observe the protocols as set by the Ministry of Health. The Ministry of Health, Public Health Department have been doing regular checks with the facilities and have been giving us guidance as to how we should manage situations there. We have also been managing the intake, doing much more community-based work and trying to work with parents so that children can remain home while we do the interventions with them. Because once a child is admitted to a facility, we have to observe the 14 days quarantine for that child. So we have been working to ensure that our children within the facilities are protected. And so we are very thankful that we have not had significant outbreaks within the facilities.
Thank you. All right, and our final question, will results be ready for the end of June as is the norm? Dr. Troop?
We are trying our endeavor best to make sure that we provide the results in a timely manner. Last year we also shifted and we were able, well, under normal circumstances, we would provide the exam in the last Friday in June for our primary schools and 1 week following that for our secondary schools. So, and last year, even with the pandemic, we were able to delay that just by a week. So we actually released the results the first week in July for our primary schools and 1 week after that for our secondary schools. It is our hope that we will try to meet the deadline for June, but it will not be later than what we experienced last year, which would be the first week in July. So we are trying to make sure we stay either for the last week in June as per normal and or the first week in July. We will not go beyond that.
Thank you, Dr. Troop. So, Minister, the final question is yours. Good evening, Minister. When is Orterius Primary School starting back up, Miss?
Similar question to one that we got
Yes.
earlier on. Again, we know how anxious parents are to have our physical schools open again. But we have to remind you that we are still going through a health crisis. Despite the fact that, you know, when you look at the younger children in terms of the numbers, it's not as bad as, you know, the older persons in our society. But nevertheless, we have to be extremely vigilant. We have to listen to the Ministry of Health and Wellness. And at this time, their best indication or recommendation is that our children remain at home until we all get to a point where they feel that you know, the numbers are at that level where it would be safe again to go out. So we await that. We know the anxiety. We know the children are at home and they, you know, they're cooped up at home. They want to be with their friends in school. They want to be doing those after school activities again. But we're all going through this together, and we're going to ensure that our children remain as safe as they can be, and as soon as we can open schools again, we will be doing it.
Okay, thank you, Minister. And to all parents who have been asking questions about the uniform and saying that you cannot afford a new uniform for one day, I understand the COVID-5, maybe the children have not had opportunities to be as active and they might be eating because they're bored or only because, you know, they're sitting there and they might have gained a few pounds, right? Boy, don't I know it. But yeah, please just have conversations with the school administrators. Teachers and principals are very understanding. We don't want to put our parents under undue duress to find money for a day. So I do understand. So please have conversations with your schools on this particular matter. And I'm sure you'll be able to come up with something that works in the best interest of the children. This is why we're here. The Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, and of course the National Parenting Support Commission. It's our mandate to work in the best interest of children. We empower parents so that they can do right by their children, so that together parents and teachers may work intelligently. So we come up with solutions that benefit our children. Can you imagine? That's a mandate of the Commission. And so it really has been our pleasure to bring this session to you this afternoon. Thank you for welcoming us into your homes. Some of you might have been on your way home. Please be careful out there. I want to thank Crystal Claire. It's been Crystal and Claire. Thanks for your professionalism. Thank you too to GIS, who has been here. Thank you for the coverage. And certainly thank you to the panelists. Thank you, Mrs. Gage Gray, for having shared and given us information about our children who are in state care, who are very important to us. Thank you, Dr. Troop, for talking a lot this evening and giving us the information. It's been a long day, but thank you. This is who we are and this is what we do. We show up. Thank you, PS, for just constantly being there and for supporting the system so very well. Thank you so much, Minister Williams. You've been having a mighty good time here at the Ministry of Education. You've been having quite a mighty good time. What a wonderful time for you to have entered. Yes, we're better for it. Thank you for your service. Thank you for the direction. And we'll see you again, parents. It's been our pleasure. I'm Casey Akar, Chief Executive Officer of the National Parenting Support Commission. Call us, text us, send us messages. We're here to serve. Thank you and have a really good evening. God bless you.